Hello, my name is Salman Hamid, and I'm Assistant Professor of Integrated Science and Humanities at Hampshire College.
I'm Kevin Anderson. I teach courses in film and anthropology at the University of Massachusetts, and this is Film Autopsy.
This is Mask, Alabama.
We are an unarmed freighter.
We have
Two skiffs approaching with armed intruders.
potential piracy situation.
Copy, Alabama. You should alert your crew and get your fire hoses ready.
Can't let him attach that ladder.
130 degrees.
130 degrees.
We have been boarded by armed pirates. If they find you. Remember, you know the ship. They don't. Stick together. And we'll be all right.
Hello, and welcome to a film autopsy of Captain Phillips, a very gripping new film directed by Paul Greengrass, with a very signature performance by Tom Hanks in the title role. It is based on actual events of a tanker, an American tanker that was pirated off the coast of Somalia back in 2009, 2010?
I think 10.
Sorry about the date. In every scene, something is at stake. I don't know exactly how he does it, but I think classes should be taught on Paul Greengrass's directing style, because he puts a film together where it is tense, but not in a way that seems just hyped up. You know, like it's just tension to be tension. It's like there's something at stake in every scene, and certainly in some scenes, much more is at stake. It was a fantastic film and very gripping from beginning to end.
I would say that don't be turned off, even though it has Tom Hanks with a signature performance. But actually, I think Tom Hanks disappears into the role, the character, and I was very hesitant to go and see this film, but Paul Greengrass, all credit to him. The opening shots are really well done and sensitive in the sense that it starts off with Captain Phillips basically living in Vermont, preparing
for his trip
and going to the airport. And then they also show...
Then they cut
to the Somalis, and
they're preparing for their day of work.
For their day of work. And
pirating.
Which is, and I appreciate the fact that which is not like, hey, let's go pirate, but in fact there are also other constraints. For example, there are other warlords that are pressuring people, and people are like, okay, what should we do, and so on and so forth. And
they're rather impoverished. I mean, it's kind of out of a real strong need. And
you can also see that impoverished nutritiously also. I mean, you can actually see the difference between Tom Hanks, a little sort of like, fatty. And whereas you see all the Somalis actually quite skinny, thin, and stuff like that. And then later on, there's also a wonderful parallel scenes between Tom Hanks's character inspecting his gigantic merchant tanker ship, and Somalis inspecting their rundown ship, basically in order to go for piracy.
But to the same level of detail.
So the same levels of detail.
Which is a nice directorial
And they're dealing
choice.
with the crew members in some sense and things like that. So I thought those parallels were brilliant, essential, and I think that's what makes the movie.
And they don't seem forced. It's not like, oh, well, these people have to pirate, because it's just, he just deals with, like, this is Tom Hanks' character's day of work. This is his job. Right. And this is what these person's jobs are.
And I think his lack of sentimentality stays throughout, meaning to say that he doesn't really say, oh, well, these are poor guys, like, look. No, he goes like, well, they did something. I mean, he almost stays with this theme that, well, no, it's not excusable, right? Even though you might understand where they might be coming from, that doesn't mean that you excuse it.
Right.
And that's a tough balance to pull off, but I think he does that in the film.
Now, do you think there's a little bit of politics here? Because let's jump to near the end of the film, and of course it's based on real life events, so we're not giving too much away. But at some point, a phone call is made, and the Navy and then the Navy SEALs are brought in. And there's this great shot where there's this tiny little lifeboat, a yellow enclosed lifeboat. And and it's in the shot, and it's surrounded by these 3 gigantic U.S. naval ships. And I just thought that shot itself was a bit of a political commentary.
But I'm not sure which way.
Yeah.
And I think
Overreaction, or
If
or
you-
don't worry, if you mess with us,
even
there
if
will
one
be
person,
consequences.
so I mean, in this case, I mean, you probably were assuming that either you know the actual story or you know from the film that it was the Captain Phillips, Tom Hanks' character, who was taken over by the pirates and
taken prisoner.
taken prisoner or hostage by 3 other Somali pirates, and they are all in this lifeboat, right? So that's all there is.
And
to
a
it.
significant length of the film takes place just dealing with that. Yeah.
And so I think that particular aspect, so you can also see that even if you mess with one American, this is what you're going to get, and you don't do that again. So I think that scene is very powerful. It's a very deliberate scene. You also see when the Marines show up in the film, the tone of the film to a certain degree changes, because there is a difference between the amateurs who were the crew members who were on the merchant ship versus the professionalism of the Marines. And I think it's a bit tricky. I'm not sure how to read that. As you said, is it a political statement? Well, I mean, this is the second film. We just 2 years ago, you had
Zero Dark 30.
Zero Dark 30,
which also
was
deals with
also
Navy SEALs coming in and taking care of a situation.
Right,
That
and-
one,
and
Osama
in
bin Laden.
both cases, I mean, these are deeply political films in that sense.
Yeah.
And those are both about 2 incredibly successful, however you want to define
Highly
it,
efficient.
successful missions of the Marines.
Well, the Navy SEALs.
Oh,
in
the Navy SEAL, sorry,
particular.
Navy SEAL. So I think that aspect is there. I mean, I would like, for Paul Greengrass, or others to make, and that's where the tricky part comes in of those missions of Navy SEALs, which have not been very successful. For example, if you want to see a companion film, Dirty Wars, that documentary, I think that would be a fantastic film. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that Dirty Wars talks about are those slightly unsuccessful Navy SEALs missions. So I mean, that when you are talking about big blockbuster Hollywood film and what you
Starring
see,
Tom Hanks.
starring Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
and what you see are those Navy SEAL images and things like that, and Marines as well. It's
One thing I did like after the mission is over, because kind of like the Somali, the pirate captain, and then Captain Phillips, the Navy SEALs, when the mission is over, they just they pack up their guns. They're not high-fiving or anything. Like this is business. It's not personal. It's business. And I think that is definitely a theme that runs throughout the whole film. It's not people are not passionate about what they're doing. There's not too much ego involved. It's like this is what they are paid to do.
But so is the disconnect between when Captain Phillips is being taken, like he's injured, and he is taken to the infirmary.
Oh,
and
yeah,
there is a
and
big
the
disconnect. It's a very
the
powerful
naval
scene.
doctor.
It's a very
Yeah,
powerful
that's
scene.
great.
But there is also a disconnect between the way the naval doctor is sort of asking him questions and
Not very good bedside manner.
exactly. I mean, there is no emotional connection. There is no sympathy. There is no emotional connection. So I think it's a great. I mean, I think it's a highly entertaining film, if you want to call it. It's gripping, but there are larger questions. But that is
I think the
beyond
suggestion
the film.
to see
Dirty Wars.
as a companion piece is a great suggestion. So there you go. You got your homework.
But do see this film.
That's part of their homework too.